All right. Hi, my name's Taylor Heron. I'm a part of the MAC program, and the book I chose to do was The Wolf of Wall Street. So, a little introduction about the book. Um, it came out in 2008. It was written by Jordan Belfort himself. Um, he was the guy that was known as the Wolf of Wall Street. And for a little roadmap of my presentation, I'm going to take you through kind of Jordan's early years and his upbringing a little bit, then hit on his career, and then talk about his company a little bit, Stratton Oakmont, his lifestyle, the company's lifestyle, and then get into the investigation, his eventual punishment, and then the frauds he were committing. So I'm going to kind of go through all the book, and then I'll hit on the frauds and the real life implications after that. Okay, so for his early years, he was born in 1962 in Queens, New York. He grew up relatively poor, just kind of in a modest apartment, both working parents. And then he always did have that business mindset. It talks from a very early age. Him and a friend were selling Italian ice on the beaches of New York. He reported that he made over 20 grand in the summers to kind of save up for school. So he was always kind of a hustler, always a good sales guy. And I'll hit on that a little bit later on too. For college, he went to American University, and then he actually wanted to become a dentist. His dad wanted to become a dentist, but his main motivation was just being rich. He didn't necessarily care about going into the dental industry, and he actually dropped out on the first day. And the story behind that was he was in like a lecture hall, kind of orientation stuff, and the dean of the school was talking, and there was a quote from the dean that said, "If you're here just because you're looking to make a lot of money, you're in the wrong place." And the story goes that Jordan stood up, left the room, and never looked back. So then in his early career, he started his career as a meat and seafood salesman, and he started it on the distributor side and eventually was owner operator of this business. But it was a really bad business, and he wasn't making very much money, so it didn't help him meet any career goals that he had. His next job, he worked for merchant bankers LF Rothschild. He got that job through a family friend connection, and that was kind of his intro into banking and the kind of money side of that. And so he was going through training and to be able to become a broker. And actually, on his first day was Black Monday. And so you can imagine how that didn't turn out well. Just for a little history, Black Monday was in October of 1987, and it was just a sudden stock market crash that really hit the financial system of the United States. The Dow Jones average actually fell 508 points that day. So then he was out of a job there, and he started looking for a job, and he found one working as a stockbroker on Long Island that specialized in penny stocks. And so I've got a little video just to kind of show you that hustler mindset he had and his selling tactics.
Caught a few weeks back requesting information on penny stocks that had huge upside potential with very little downside risk. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, yeah, I may have said so.
Okay, great. Well, reason for the call today, John, is something just came across my desk, John. It is perhaps the best thing I've seen in the last 6 months. If you have 60 seconds, I'd like to share the idea with you. You got a minute? Name of the company, Aerotine International. It is a cutting-edge, high-tech firm out of the Midwest awaiting imminent patent approval on a next generation of radar detectors that have both huge military and civilian applications. Now, right now, John, the stock trades over the counter at 10 cents a share. And by the way, John, our analysts indicate it could go a heck of a lot higher than that. Your profit on a mere $6,000 investment would be upwards of $60,000.
Jesus, that's my mortgage, man.
Exactly, you could pay off your mortgage.
This stock will pay off my house.
John, one thing I can promise you, even in this market, is that I never ask my clients to judge me on my winners. I ask them to judge me on my losers because I have so few. And in the case of Aerotyne, based on every technical factor out there, John, we are looking at a grand slam home run.
Okay, let's do it. I'll do $4,000.
4,000, that'd be 40,000 shares, John. Let me lock in that trade right now and get back to you with my secretary with an exact confirmation. Sound good, John?
Sounds good.
Great. Hey, John, thank you for your vote of confidence, and welcome to the Investors Center.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
How'd you fucking do that?
It's caught a few weeks.
Okay, so as you can see, he was really good with his words when it came to selling less lucrative stocks. You could see from the picture that he was selling a company that was just based out of a garage in the middle of Iowa. It was not by any means, he didn't have any information saying it was going to go up, but by lying to the investor, he was able to complete the sale. And then you can also just see in awe of the people around him, and that's because he was just at a lower level brokerage firm, and he really knew what he was doing. And so his success there led him to starting Stratton Oakmont. Stratton Oakmont was his own brokerage firm that was based out of Manhattan, and he started with his partner Danny Porush in 1989, and that was an over-the-counter brokerage. And so what that meant was a lot of the transactions were unsupervised. It wasn't like the New York Stock Exchange or anything like that. And so they advertised to just like getting rich and getting rich quick. So this was very attractive to young people. He claimed that by year 2, you should be making over $1 million plus. One of his quotes was, "Don't hang up the phone until the customer buys or dies." And so they were really hitting hard investors that maybe didn't have the knowledge. They were just drilling them with information like the phone call I showed you on the last slide, and which eventually led to them investing with them and them making a lot of profits. Their main system was the pump and dump system. This is a form of securities fraud. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, but that was the main scheme he was pulling off here. And then, so what he would do essentially was he'd take advantage of these new companies, control their stock, pump their stock onto his investors, and then end up dumping the stock for a major profit later on. So then the Stratton lifestyle was kind of how he sold his firm to potential employees. And it was kind of like just the stereotypical Wall Street type of guy. And so it was a very aggressive lifestyle that included drugs, sex, horseplay, extremely crude behavior. And he encouraged his employees to live lavishly, drive fancy cars, have big mansions, and kind of live out of their means. He touched on the book that some people were young, early 20s, early mid-20s, and would actually like own mansions or nice penthouse apartments, but actually still live at home because they still felt comfortable. They just owned the house and the apartment just to kind of fit the Stratton lifestyle mold. So it was not uncommon for people to be doing coke in the office, or higher ups hooking up with like young employees to try to boost their promotions quicker. Pets were allowed in the office. People had anything from snakes to ferrets. At one point, they had a meeting to offer a woman $5,000 to shave her head. So that's kind of gives you a little look on the atmosphere going on in the office. Not your typical office, but people were making a lot of money. They were getting rich and being able to live the lifestyle they wanted. So then Jordan, he did live this same lifestyle. He was a very aggressive kind of party person. He was, though, suffered from substance abuse. He was big into drugs, big into alcohol, and this kind of influenced his mind into this lifestyle. The main drug he talks about it a lot in the book, was Quaaludes, which was a sleeping drug, and he claimed that if you fought off the urge to sleep, it gave him just an incredible feeling that he kept trying to reach. And it was actually made illegal in the 80s. by the DEA, so you need a lot of money to get your hands on Quaaludes, which he had and was willing to spend. But some of the things his drugs caused him to do, he was learning to get his pilot's license, and he actually crashed his helicopter in his yard. His wife wasn't happy about that one, as you can imagine, sleeping at night and then having a helicopter crash in your backyard. He sunk his yacht, and just to kind of give you a perspective of how rich he was, his yacht was previously owned by Chanel, the big fashion company. And then he also blames his drug abuse, which ultimately ended his second marriage. He was not a very good husband. He was sleeping with prostitutes and just kind of running out all night on these drug benders. And his partner Danny also always accompanied him on these adventures. So then next, just kind of touch on the success of Stratton Oakmont. They were very fast-paced. This made it very popular with employees and like young people looking for jobs. And so they could bring him in, teach him his tactics on the phone. And essentially, these people were just getting rich, calling people all day long and making sales to investors that didn't have the knowledge. He was so successful and it grew so fast that in an article written by the Wall Street Journal, that's where he was given the nickname the Wolf of Wall Street. I don't think it was supposed to be a positive nickname, but he took it as such, and he loved the power behind the name, the Wolf of Wall Street. Due to all the success, though, they did have a lot of money, and because of their pump and dump scheme, not all their money was legal, so this led to another problem. So that brought him, the problem was what to do with all the cash. So that brought him to Switzerland. Switzerland was known, at least in the 90s, I'm not sure today, but very low-key bank laws. They were not going to prosecute you. They weren't going to give you over to the United States, which made it for a perfect place for Jordan to launder his money. So he went over to Switzerland and to discuss details with the banker, and he was very skeptical. He really had to, it was millions and millions of dollars, so he really had to put trust into this banker. But after talking to him, the banker assured him that he wouldn't even need a name on the bank account. So how it worked was there was just a number tied to the bank account, and the banker was the only one that was supposed to know that it was Jordan's bank account. And so he would launder his money. It would sit in the Swiss bank, and the banker would forge investment documents in the Swiss stock market and then send Jordan his fake returns from investments he's made, which was really just the cash he was making in the United States. The trust went as far as if something would have happened to Jordan, like he passed away, it was just on the honor system that the Swiss banker would go find his wife and give him the money because Jordan wanted nobody's names tied to it. The biggest problem he did have, though, was getting the cash to Switzerland. He used people that wouldn't be red flags in customs, really. So he was using like some of his employees' parents, grandparents, families, kids, stuff like that, just to get the cash to Switzerland. He even went as far as using his wife's aunt to help him smuggle money to the United States. And that worked really well because she wasn't even American, so she was British. So that worked out. So then, just to kind of give you an example of a company that they took public. So Danny was good friends with Steve Madden, and they used this connection to be able to be the company to take Steve Madden public. Steve Madden, the major shoe brand. And so what Jordan would do is he would make a deal to where he owned the majority of Steve Madden's stock. And but obviously Steve owned a lot too. And so when they took it public, their whole sales room would just pump that stock into all of their investors, causing the price to go extremely high. And then Jordan could get out and make a major profit on it. And then back to just kind of the atmosphere in their office, Steve Madden, you would think the owner of the company, is going to be highly praised and respected in this environment. and he was actually booed off the stage when he was giving his speech on the day they went public. Stratton wanted nothing to do with anything he had to say. They just wanted him to stop talking so they could start selling his stock and continue to get rich. Okay, so then this is where like the kind of investigation starts. In 1992, the SEC started to catch on what Jordan was doing, and so they were sitting in Stratton Oakmont all the time just investigating. Every transaction, they're looking over it, but he was very good at hiding it. So this went on for a couple years, and finally they were accusing him of defrauding investors and manipulating stock prices, which was exactly what he was doing. But instead of being prosecuted criminally, they just reached a settlement. Stratton Oakmont had to pay a really large fine, and then Jordan was banned from working in the stock industry. Funny though, Jordan didn't just get out. There was a $180 million buyout, so he was fine financially. And then Danny took over the company and was still eating lunch with Jordan every day and following Jordan's advice. But Danny was not a man of the people, some might say, as Jordan was. On his first day, he got mad at an employee for wearing a bow tie and then ate his pet fish in front of the whole company just to show that he was in charge. So then, just because the SEC was out of his hair didn't mean the FBI wasn't. The FBI was doing their own investigation, and an agent really had an eye out for this and was really out to get him, and there was eventually nothing he could do. They knew about the scams in Switzerland. They knew essentially all about what he was doing, and he also eventually tried to bribe an FBI agent, which did not work in his favor. So then this comes to his confession. He kind of fought him for a few years and tried to claim he was doing nothing wrong, but eventually he knew he was going to be guilty. So in 1999, he pled guilty to securities fraud and money laundering. He cut a deal to fully cooperate, and this reduced his prison sentence. In 2003, he was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison and a $110 million fine. He was let out after 22 months because of good behavior. So then, just a 2020 update. This wasn't in the book, but just kind of how he came out. He's now the owner of a company giving sales training and marketing straight-line training programs aimed at building wealth. He was good at selling, so he could probably sell something legitimate too, and probably help people get their selling skills up. And then it's been reported he's paid $14 million of his $110 million fine. So then let's go into the frauds. These are the two main schemes he was doing. The first one's a pump and dump. And so what is a pump and dump? That is when you're inflating the price of a stock you owned through false and misleading positive statements in order to sell it, to purchase it cheap and then sell it at a major profit. And so he was very guilty of doing this. This is mainly done with penny stocks, which is a stock under $5. That way there's less information on it, way less regulation on it. It's not being supervised as much. And then just some potential warning signs. Reverse mergers stick out, trading on pink sheets, sketchy financials, obviously. Horn blowing was a big one that you kind of say he was doing. That's just like advertising it a lot, like sending out a bunch of emails, sending out a bunch of calls, really like, I guess, quote unquote, blowing the horn on the stock and being buy to drive up the price. And then certain connections can be sketchy in this, and then also just a trading surge. If it's a really bad stock that there's almost no information and it randomly just starts selling, that can be a red flag that a pump and dump is going on. So then the second fraud was his money laundering. And this was obviously, as I described, taking place in Switzerland. And this is just the concealment of the origins of legally obtained money, typically by the means of transfers involving foreign banks or legitimate businesses. And so the steps to this were placement, layering, and integration. So the placement is getting the cash into the financial system, which is what he was doing by putting his cash in Switzerland. The second is carrying out complex financial transactions. This was his forged trading. So that was the layering. And then acquiring the wealth is the integration, which that was just him getting his returns from the Swiss bank. So that was, I guess, the easy part once the forging was already taking place. And then just some potential warning signs if a bank or if a customer's wanting to avoid record keeping and recording requirements. They're being suspicious about their identification, not giving you original copies, things like that. There's suspicious cash transactions going on, maybe some suspicious credit activity like paying off a loan, but you don't think they would have the funds to do so, or suspicious employee activity like living out of their means, buying big house, nice car that you know they don't have the money for. So how can this information help? If fraud investigators know the ins and outs of like pump and dump scheme, money laundering, they should know the warning signs and what to look for. Also, this can help them ask the right questions now that they've seen how Jordan Belfort was able to pull it off. They always need to be professionally skeptical, and just always have that questioning mindset. Really look into people, and then just dig deeper when things don't seem right. Like Jordan was drawing a bunch of red flags, and the SEC stepped in, and then the FBI didn't let him off after that. Just keep digging when you think the information or when you think the criminal is committing a crime. But that's all I have on the Wolf of Wall Street. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.